Hi, this is Dan from Inclusion Space. We have a YouTube channel where we talk about all things related to inclusion, and today I am lucky enough to have a parent and colleague in the Minneapolis Public Schools, Nancy Kent, who has a son who's going through the public schools, and she's also a substitute teacher. Is that still correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So thanks for joining me today. Thanks for being willing to talk about inclusion and your story and your experiences with it. And
Sure. Yeah. My pleasure.
great. Um, if you wouldn't mind, if you would be so kind, can you just start by introducing yourself and telling us a little about what you do and what your story is with your son?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Nance Kent, and I'm actually a retired teacher. Early childhood is my training and experience, and I've been a reserve teacher in Minneapolis for the last 5 years. So, and I've kind of done all the different grades. As to being Walter's mother, um, he's 16 now, and he's been quite the education for me and a real joy in my life. It's just like every kid, it's all the problems and all the pleasures that you learn from. So, and in his case, he has Down syndrome. So, he fortunately hasn't had too many health problems, but he's had, just kind of struggles in school. And it's because, I try to figure it out constantly, and it keeps changing, and it's also hard for me to grasp. um, but I think it's because he's very intuitive, and he's also doesn't get the sort of most of the abstract things, including a lot of the social nuances and social expectations. Um, so in that way, it's like Adrian Monk says, it's a gift and a curse because he's just real. He's just
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
I mean, today he went out the door with a cape on that he made for himself and his joy doll. So and dressed up as Joy underneath the cape. So he's like the real thing. And and he's also. I mean, I think the issue is that it's very hard for him to put himself in other people's shoes. So he is what he is, and he's not quite getting where other people are coming from, and so that's where he runs into problems, I think. So, um, but the beauty to me of him is, in today's world, is that we're, I think, as a human race, we're just really beginning to understand diversity and appreciate it.
Hmm.
And he's there. In years past, he would have been in an institution, and I think he would have died because and a lot of people with Down syndrome did die in institutions, but in his case, it would be because he would just die of loneliness. And so he needs to be around people. He loves being around people, but he's he's different than most people. So the more we can appreciate what's different, and also um, I would say his talent, his gifts, I think the more um, we're kind of opening our minds to, again, world's diversity, and how we can. appreciate everyone's gifts and talents and what they can offer to the world.
What are some
Um,
of Walter's gifts?
well, he's just really happy most of the time. That's the
Hmm.
main one, and he likes to make other people happy. I mean, I
Hmm.
think part of the Kate thing is that he's wearing a costume and he likes to dance and he likes to greet people and he loves to give hugs and that's again it's a gift and a curse. I mean, a lot of us like hugs, but there are some boundary issues too, and also some people don't. So he has to learn how to ask.
Hmm.
Um, but he also, one of the intuitive things that he does is often he finds people who especially need a hug. So for example, on we went to this Mardi Gras party at the church down the street, and he was dancing away to the Mardi Gras band, and there was this um, older man who was sitting kind of near the dance floor, and Walter kept going over to him to dance with him, and it turned out well. He was, and this man's face just lit up, and Walter hugged him. He danced with him some more while he was sitting in his chair. Then Walter, I don't know what happened. He went to do something, and the man called me over, realizing I was his mom, and he said, I have cancer and I can't stand. Um, so that's why I can't dance with him. And I'm like, you're doing great. You're fine. So, but clearly Walter had kind of picked him out, to, uh, to have fun with.
Hmm.
Um, so,
Yeah, yeah, that's really nice. That's a nice story. Um, can you? I know that you guys had like a transition from New Mexico to Minneapolis, like,
yes,
and that was how many years ago? Four,
six. Gosh,
6 years.
well, almost, six in this June. It'll be six. Yeah.
Can you talk about just kind of how that went, making a huge move like that, and then I mean you had Walter had to move schools and a city and
Yes,
huge
yes.
change. So
And family too,
yeah.
which is huge for him. So, well, partly why we moved was because, um, there are problems here in Minnesota for sure, which I could talk about. Um,
Hmm.
but New Mexico, and I noticed this, we would come visit my family up here. And the culture is a little farther ahead up here for people with disabilities. New Mexico, unfortunately, is farther behind. So um, I just so anyway, that's partly why we moved. And also, there we have a sort of a bigger family network up here, and that it was hard for him at first, but it's also opened up his world more too. So the transition was very difficult. I'm pretty sure I'm never going to do that again. uh, but um, just any kind of change is hard for him. But the good thing is, like, we would go, like, because I have our extended family up here has like 20 people in it. We
Hmm.
would go to the family get together on a Sunday, say, and he would hide in the closet. um,
Hmm.
it was just like too much for him. So now he doesn't hide in the closet anymore. That it took him a year, and it's partly that he's getting older. You know,
Hmm.
um, and that's actually another example of sort of the world that's different now. I mean, I do think in some ways, he's like a poster child of the kind of person who has the difficulties that he has. That
Hmm.
in 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 the past, he would have been sort of increasingly segregated and increasingly isolated, and not and it would have changed his personality. Um, so he, by basically pushing him constantly to be connected to people and more people, and also the community, which is hard for him. He honestly would rather just stay home and watch TV.
Yeah.
um,
Wouldn't we all though? No.
yeah, in some ways, I wouldn't.
No,
I
no.
would just go walking out in the
Well,
woods, but but
I was gonna say that was my that was, yeah, I do that first and then stay home and watch
yeah,
TV.
that's
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
like.
um, what what were your initial when Walter was born and then as he got a little older, what were some of the hopes and dreams that you started to did you have a chance to like think about what your hopes and dreams for Walter would be?
Well, yes, and actually, what's happening now that he's 16 is I'm realizing my hopes and dreams are not the same as his hopes and dreams, which is good. It's um, like I keep. I mean, as you know, he said when he was your student that he wanted to be a teacher like you.
Mhm.
And he still says that. But he's also talking now about getting married and about having a car and a big house. And I'm like, okay, the married, yes. The car, no. The house, I trying to explain to him you need money to buy a house and you have to have a job and he does want a job, absolutely. In fact, he talks about he wants to go to college too.
Uh-huh.
But the job that he can have, I don't think is going to buy him the big fancy house that he is thinking of. So, never mind the issue of him living alone, which I don't think would be either good for him or even possible. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm trying to uh, keep an open mind and but also be realistic.
Yeah.
So but my hopes and dreams for him from the beginning were that because what was happening to me being his mom was he was he was lightening up my outlook. He was helping me because I tend to get too serious and sort of worried about the problems in the world, blah blah blah. And it's just hard when you're around him to keep being like that because like he would come over to me and say, "Are you okay?" And he'd give me a big hug and a kiss, and
Uh-huh.
it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I am okay. So he's helped me. I mean, actually, he's helped me way more than I've helped him. I would like to see him bring that to other people.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what form it would take or how it would work or, you know, because he's also moody, like the rest of us, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's not always a ray of light, sometimes it's not a ray of light,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
um, and it's hard. I mean, and again, it's not, I don't feel like our society, I mean, I kind of like, this isn't my I feel like I'm like John Lennon's Imagine, imagine a world where people like Walter can wear their capes and, bring joy, when they're at their best and yet be, safe and, um, have their basic needs met, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like him to bring his gift to the world, but I don't know what form that's going to take.
Mm-hmm. Um, can you talk about how New Mexico what New Mexico how they addressed like inclusion versus how Minneapolis um, uh, had slightly different educational system set up for Walter. I mean, what were some of the similarities or differences that you
Well,
experienced?
honestly, I mean, what I've realized these 6 years of being here is Minneapolis is pretty far behind as well, and what
Hmm.
is, I would call, state of the art inclusion.
Hmm.
Um, though though Minneapolis was ahead, and honestly, I think it's partly just more money. New Mexico is a very poor state, so
Hmm.
for example, there were no psychologists working with kids with, that wasn't even a
Hmm.
thing, unless the person had a mental um, illness.
Hmm.
So, and social workers. There were no social workers.
Wow.
So, um, and and the history of just segregating kids with disabilities. I mean, they mostly were literally out in the Quonset hut at the edge of the football field,
Mm.
you know. Um, and so the sort of the and a lot of parents were starting to basically fight for their kids to be more included, but it was so I think I would say in Minnesota we're like 10, 15 years ahead, but we're still, we still have the old habit of segregating kids, and what I've realized is as kids get older in the school system, it's more towards segregation. And it is because it's harder, it's harder to integrate a kid in ninth grade, which is where Walter is now, who's reading at a kindergarten level, to integrate him into an English class
Hmm.
than it is in kindergarten. you know, so and that's where the state of the art stuff comes in. Is
What what would you like to see? Since we're talking about maybe um, if your sense that Minneapolis has a ways to go, where would you like to see um, where would you like to see Minneapolis go? And if you could, maybe make some just suggestions as to what would the day look like for a student um, like Walter, for example.
well, what I think needs to happen is more the whole thing of what's called differentiating the instruction.
Hmm.
So it would be basically assuming that they're going to be in regular classes, but that they're going to have a curriculum that's basically completely different. That I mean, I shouldn't say completely different. That's differentiated so that they can access
Hmm.
the content. So
Adapted
like
or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
adapted. So and they're like with Walter, because he's a visual learner and
Hmm.
his reading is so, you'd have to have lots of pictures. You'd have to have, like, if they're reading Romeo and Juliet, you'd have to have a graphic Romeo and Juliet that would be very simplified, and it would have really very few words that he could read.
Hmm.
But then sort of, you know, and then I mean, I think the beauty of it is that way he could be following the story,
Hmm.
and um, and then work in groups to when the class is working in groups on whatever they're going to do, either discussing it or reenacting parts of it or whatever, and then adapt that part within the group.
So
Um,
finding just different ways to present um,
present the
the
material.
material, and then different ways for Walter to access participation.
Yeah, and what I've found, I mean, just this is just through my own experience of trying to find materials for him,
Yeah.
is that there's very few high school, curricula that have pictures, and never mind lots of pictures with um, with very few words. It's just almost impossible to find. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's the issue for the schools, because basically this year our high school in our neighborhood opened up for the first time to kids with his level of disability. So he's kind of path breaking there, but they had no funding and no training.
Hmm.
So the mandate was to include him, but no funding and no training. So there's no material, and the teachers don't know what to do. So it's been really rough.
Hmm.
Um, and I can't, basically we had to stepping back
Hmm.
because he was floundering, in these big classes with and not understanding everything was over his head,
Hmm.
and that's not inclusion.
Oh.
That's kind of the, I guess, maybe the stereotype of what is, and then everybody says, well, what good is that? And they're right.
Hmm.
What good is it for the kid to sit in the class if they're not getting anything?
Yeah.
So
Has Walter done, have you heard anything about collaborative teaching or like a co-teaching model where like the
yes,
special ed
actually,
teacher and the general ed teacher don't just kind of, well, there's the one model where, the general ed teacher is there and then the special ed teacher comes in and sort of sits down in the back, and the general ed teacher does their thing, and then every once in a while the special ed teacher might, do an adaptation, but co-teaching would be more like a symbiotic type of relationship in the classroom where they're working together, they're presenting lessons together, maybe tag teaming or scaffolding or doing just different modes of presentation, and so that it's not just one person taking ownership, but both teachers kind of working together. I was thinking that would be a model that would allow for some of the things that you were kind of hoping to see happen,
yes, absolutely,
where there'd
absolutely.
be like a mind thinking about like all the different ways that the kids in the class need to maybe could access the material or kind of punch into what's going on, and then there's the other teacher who has the vision of like what is this curriculum and where do we need to go with it, so that you could kind of work together to make it accessible for all the different learners and like a universal approach.
Yeah, no, I was just looking. I have a book on co-teaching that
Hmm.
I did some training. Years ago, I was sent to Colorado from New Mexico, and Colorado has a really active, what is it called, parent resource organization.
Hmm.
Anyway, yes, absolutely. And then there's that, the whole dual licensing where the teacher is actually licensed in both special ed and regular ed.
Hmm.
But I think the co-teaching is even better because two heads are better than one,
Hmm.
and I think it's a great model for kids, for our society of people actually working together. I mean, unfortunately, teaching has a long history of you sort of the isolated teacher, doing their thing in their classroom, and that is just so outdated, and it's literally impossible with that model to stay, um, you know, I guess abreast of all the new developments
Hmm.
and
um,
yeah.
what can you talk about some of the successes that Walter's experienced or that you and Walter have experienced through what through the ways that he has been included over the
Yeah.
years.
Well, yeah, I mean, mainly, like we go around our neighborhood. I mean, I was very insistent that he go to his neighborhood school because the community is our community. We walk around, we know people, um, it's where our church is, it's where we go to the playground. So he runs into people all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and oh, that's my friend from school.
Mm-hmm.
So um, there's just that. I mean, literally being able to greet your neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I I think it's just, well, I said this earlier. I mean, it's changed his life because he considers himself um, a member of the community. He
Hmm.
feels, in fact, this is you're gonna think this is really comical, and I've only just started to wrap my mind around it. This year, he was so insistent to go to the high school that his sister went to, for one thing, and he
Hmm.
considered it, Allie's high school, um, and so he goes to the cafeteria, which was hugely overwhelming for him. But one of the options was for him to sit with, and this is the old model, the special needs kids have their own table,
Hmm.
um, and he did not want to sit with them because he is prejudiced against them.
Hmm.
I mean, basically, he's saying, I don't want to sit with the kids with disabilities because, I'm better than that,
Hmm.
which I find very problematic. I mean, I was telling his teacher he's learned how to be a high school snob. Um, you know, and
Yeah.
I mean, but sadly, I mean, I actually had this conversation yesterday with the assistant principal over there. I said, what he's picking up on is real. He's picking up on the snobbery, the cliques, even the racism and sexism.
Hmm.
Now he's 16. So my problem now is to keep him from becoming a member of a cruel society that, you know what I mean, that he's picked up on.
Oh man.
He got in trouble calling my sister-in-law fat. He just said, "Oh, she's fat." I said, "You can't just call people fat." I mean, so he's picking up on these prejudices and the cliques and the inequality in our society
Yeah.
and sort of replicating them
Yeah.
and without nuance, like the rest of us have. It's like, uh, so I mean, why did I even bring that up? Oh, so it's a double-edged sword. I mean, he's getting it, but and do I want him to be, the racist, sexist, um, you know,
It's not part of your hopes and dreams for him.
no, not part of my hopes and dreams, but this is what he's picking up on.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's mainstream now to be racist and sexist. So,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So this is we're kind of on 2.0 inclusion, inclusion into what?
Yeah. Um, let's see. I have a couple more questions. Um, can you talk about how you're being a teacher and now in Minneapolis now? I know you've been in probably a lot of different classrooms being a substitute teacher. How has that informed your vision of what you would like to have, what to see for Walter? Because I imagine that having the opportunity to see all these different teaching styles in classrooms would probably kind of make you start thinking, wow, that might really work for Walter, or no, that's not going to work. Just seeing how different people do things different. Maybe being in different schools and different classrooms. I'm just wondering if that kind of helps to give you ideas or kind of.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't. I mean, it does in a sense. What I've seen, because I go in Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, and Edina, is
Mhm.
I see where there's more money, there's more inclusion, but not always, and not. Honestly, it's not. It's very uneven, even where the money is.
Hmm.
Um, so I really think I, that we still need to make a huge leap. And I think a big part of it is it relates to these other problems in our society. We kind of get so far and then we kind of pat ourselves on the back and we say, oh, we're doing this good stuff. But we really haven't made the paradigm shift that we need to.
What is it about some programs or some schools or maybe some teachers that they have maybe like a more advanced approach to inclusion than other schools? Why do you think that happens? Is it something that's
Well, I mean, the co-teaching. Actually, I don't do any co-teaching.
mm,
And maybe, and that's it. Could just be by accident. I mean, I do hope there's co-teaching going
yeah.
on. Um, but I don't see it really. The thing I see more of where there's money is like SEAs being used more flexibly,
Hmm.
and the kids and actually it costs less money, which is kind of crazy because then what happens is the SEAs are kind of going in and out of classrooms, kids are, and then they're being included more in the instruction, and a lot of times the other students are part of that.
Hmm.
But that's happening organically, and it certainly doesn't cost anything.
Hmm.
It's happening because the student schedule has been designed,
Hmm.
to be more inclusive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So I sometimes I wonder, like I feel like the ideas like inclusion come about through one or two teachers getting exposure to the idea of it, either through pressure from parents or
right.
from something they learned in their licensure program. Maybe like I know when I went to the University of St. Thomas for my special ed teaching licensure. um, I had a professor who was very a huge advocate for inclusion, and that was her sort of the biggest point that she wanted to drive home, that kids can be included at any level if they can learn it through an inclusive experience. And so
Hmm.
that was that was the seed that was planted when I was just beginning. And then then you come to you start teaching, and it's not necessarily the same model when you first start teaching as what you've been told, in school. So I'm just wondering where that comes from. Does it just come from the individual teachers? Does it come from like an administrator that says, I just really want to have an inclusive environment in this school, and or maybe that's something that the parents need to drive. I feel like it has to be everybody kind of driving
Well,
together there.
that's the problem. It does have to be systemic.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you can have a couple of teachers and they can be path breakers, but you also have to have the support of the administration, and it has to be pretty profound support because it does involve money and training
Yeah. There has to.
and there's a process. It's not a one shot deal at all.
Hmm.
So
Well, it seems like everybody has to be on board, and particularly if you're going to do like a co-teaching type of model, where inclusion can not just be about us and them, but everybody together.
exactly.
There needs to be like a different model, an understanding of how the teachers are going to make it inclusive. Because I know that in general education, as a separate entity from special ed, you kind of at the beginning of the year, the special ed teacher is knocking on your door saying, "Hey, I got these few kids. I want to get them in your class." But how can they actually become part of the classroom, and and not just be passively there? That's just what I'm wondering.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. Well, and the beauty of real co-teaching, as you probably know, is the the person whose training is in all the art of special ed, can help all the kids in the classroom. You
hmm.
know, there's so many. I mean, basically, you look at it like that. You say, okay, every kid is different. Every kid needs an IEP, really.
Hmm.
You so you have the person that's part of the co-teaching team is kind of there. That's their specialty is individualization, right?
Hmm.
And then the regular ed teacher, their specialty is kind of the curriculum and sort of I don't know. I'm just brainstorming here, but
Hmm.
is delivering the curriculum. We'll put it that way.
Hmm.
So you have those two heads together, and you're basically modifying and differentiating for every single kid. So all the kids are benefited.
Um, Have you heard of? I just went to like a professional development training a couple months ago about universal design, which is
Yes.
like, which has the theory that something should pretty much anything can be designed in a way that is accessible for everybody, whether it's like uh, a doorway into a building that is accessible for has a ramp and it's designed, it's like a well designed thought out ramp that everybody can get in. um, versus just like a design that's only accessible to people who can access the stairs, or and it applies to like a curriculum or a classroom model, or
Yeah.
even if
Well,
like, yeah.
I didn't use that phrase in the conversation I had yesterday at Southwest, but I was talking about it. They're going through this huge remodel.
Hmm.
And we're walking to the meeting and we're going by what was the old cafeteria. And the teacher says, oh, they're turning that into the career enrichment, the college and career readiness center. And it's like this gigantic cafeteria. I said, you know what? They need to break that into, okay, college and career readiness. What about having a calm room and
Hmm.
a room for the students of color to chill out together?
Hmm.
Also, you know, that's an example of universal design. You have a calm room in a huge high school. Who's
Hmm.
going to go? Many kids need to go. At a certain point, they feel overwhelmed. They're like, I can't do this anymore. I need to
Hmm.
go to the calm room.
Hmm.
And as a choice, not as you're going to the calm room. You're like, because you've already
Hmm.
started disrupting my classroom or whatever.
Right.
Um,
Thinking about the needs of everybody and
yeah,
how,
yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, there should be a calm room in every school, in my
Hmm.
opinion.
Hmm.
And that's universal design.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, can you can you talk about um, resources that you found helpful as a parent, whether they're just like groups or after school type of resources, or even I don't know, extracurricular type of activities that you have found helpful for Walter?
Well, for him, what has been really helpful is Special Olympics and Gigi's Playhouse, which is the center here in the Twin Cities for like a resource slash activity slash tutoring slash networking center for people with Down syndrome. And he just loves it there. I mean, and the beauty of it is you can be yourself, So,
Mhm.
um, and also meet other kids, who have your, similar disability, which is really, and as he gets older, that's super important. Those are his real peers, people he can just hang out with and, play with dolls with, or, sing karaoke and at the top of their lungs, or
Mhm.
um, and then the Special Olympics, and it's kind of ironic, isn't it, that it's in a way it's the opposite of inclusion. But the thing what Special Olympics is starting to do, it's because but it's actually it's like all of us, we want to go out in our community and whatever, meet and greet and meet all kinds of different people, but we also want to be around people who we really sort of connect with on a deep level, that share our thoughts and dreams, and um, so we segregate ourselves too by
Mhm.
different things. So Special Olympics is like that. I mean, the people in Special Olympics they all have disabilities, and it's just a joy to sort of have everybody competing to whatever extent they can, you
Mhm.
know. Um, But the Special Olympics has started doing, as you probably know, the unified sports.
Mhm.
So what they bring in people that don't have disabilities. So there's like sort of parallel competitions. There's the
Mhm.
Special Olympics, and then there's the unified team, and those are good too.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Have you ever found any like parent advocacy groups or
Oh yeah, there. Well, the actually when I first moved up here, before I even got here, um, there's a network, and I think it's called like the Minnesota Down Syndrome Families. It's like a listserv, and I joined that. So, and I still, get the emails and all. To me, I like it, but I'm not. I find this is just me personally that I don't like to. I guess it's segregate myself. I don't like to just talk to parents,
mm,
or get too wound up in like my kid's disability. It's
mm.
just like give me a break. I don't want to talk about it all the time.
Yeah,
So um,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So
if
it's a great support group, but I guess what I'm saying is support groups I use them sort of sporadically. I'll put it
hmm
that way.
yep. Um, for other parents who may have stumbled across this video and who maybe have made it this far into the video, can you can you can you
Get a life.
turn it off right now? No, can you can you tell Nancy? Can you tell? Do you have any advice for parents who may be in a similar boat, or um, if they're just starting looking at schools, or um, what would you tell yourself, like looking back 16 years ago, or
I have no clue. Each kid is so different, and each, parenting styles are so different. Um, I mean, I do think support does, just so you don't feel like you're alone. But I feel like there's quite a bit of that now. There's the Down Syndrome Association of Minnesota. There's the Gigi's Playhouse. There's, just for sort of getting information, and now of course the internet. I
Mhm.
mean, you just have to Google it. And then it is nice to just have friends, that are going through the same thing they're going through.
Mhm.
Um, and then just work it out day by day.
Is there a message that you have that you, if you could send like a message to Walter's um, uh, peers, like, and I'm talking about like other kids who go to Southwest or wherever what school he's going to go to in the future, just how would you, any message you want to send to them in thinking about how you would like them to include Walter or be around Walter, like what would you hope that they do?
Yeah, I just, it's sort of like everything. Just hope that um, they have an open mind and get to know him, and I hope he learns to get to know them too, that,
Hmm.
I mean, I do think that the beauty of public school is that kids have the opportunity, and it doesn't necessarily happen, to get to know each other and sort of get a diverse um, view of the world.
Hmm. And I found that in my experience that the first people to get to know each other and to do that are almost always the kids. They're always better at it than the adults.
Yes, they are. They are.
And maybe that's because they still have an open mind. They're fresh. They haven't been so
Yeah.
um, spoiled by their life experiences or whatever,
Yes, yes, yes.
But yeah, I'm always really I oftentimes I'm very impressed by what I see kids doing, and it often surprises me, and I shouldn't be surprised, but I am every time when I see
Right,
somebody
right.
really genuinely wanting to include somebody and get to know them and be part of their life, and I see that all the time at school. So
Yes, yes.
yeah.
I've seen it at Lake Harriet, out in the playground. It's a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
That's actually one of the things I said to Southwest. I said, how can you take that away from those kids? They've been friends with these kids for years, and then they go to high school and they've disappeared. you know,
Yeah.
I mean, actually, that's a problem. The big problem in high school is even if they haven't disappeared, where's the chance? There's no playground.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, where's the chance to really play and just be with each other? It's kind of sad, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I always thought it would be nice to have like kind of an open type of Montessori like learning space where you could just kind of choose what you wanted to do and work in a group
Yeah,
of kids and not be
yeah.
interrupted.
There
But
you go.
uh,
Well, we're talking, these new designs for schools are really, we're getting there.
mhm,
I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but education is getting ready for a huge paradigm shift
mhm,
that's already happening. So
yeah.
it's, what is that Pink Floyd song?
I don't know. We don't need no education.
Education, we don't need no thought control.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The song that rings through our ears whenever we go to work. One of the many, one of the many songs about education. Well, I think we're kind of running low on time. Anything else that you want to share before we sign off? That you last thoughts about inclusion for Walter or anything like that? Or we talked about a lot today.
Yeah, it's so nice to talk with you, and I'm glad to hear you're looking into this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's something that people are interested in. Parents, teachers, and hopefully administration. And
Yeah,
I feel like I think we can go a long way to getting more out of inclusion when we just kind of start talking about it and investigating. You know what works and what
yeah.
can we do better.
Oh,
You know.
I don't. We shouldn't do it here, but I have a couple of people to send you to
Hmm.
for
That'd be
your research.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to. And for anybody who's watching and interested in talking and sharing their thoughts, you know, contact me. And um, you know we can continue this dialogue about inclusion and people's experiences. So thanks a lot, Nancy, and
Okay.
I'm gonna we'll end the interview and we'll and then you and I can talk a little bit more and then we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
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 All
Thanks,
right.
guys. All right.